Hello there, how's everyone doing? My name is Kanishk Priyadarshi. I'm from Accenture High Tech San Francisco. Very excited to talk to you here today about IoT and big data, ecosystem engineering, a very tumultuous marriage. Now I'll confess I struggled with that title a bit. You could say it was a toss-up between tumultuous marriage or polygamous marriage, but we'll come back to that later. Maybe you guys can help me decide that. So let's just start with a little bit of level setting and talk about just what we mean by IoT, at least in our practice. We've been waiting for IoT at Accenture for a very long time. Specifically, we've been thinking of it as a natural evolution from next-gen RFID projects to machine projects to what we are now, of course, calling IoT projects. At a very high level, we refer to these as an opportunity for us to do large-scale transformations for our enterprise clients to essentially create ambient awareness, to find next-gen efficiency, transform their business models, maybe go to usage-based business models, and then finally to monetize their client data. So, a very simple way of paraphrasing what exactly we mean by Internet of Things. Now, specifically, if you read the reports, IoT has been talked about as sort of the next-gen industrial revolution with $1 trillion economic impact and whatnot. Now, I can't vouch for the havoc it's going to create on the general economy, but I can certainly vouch for the extraordinary disruption it's done in our own practice. It's created, shall I say, a creative collision of ideas from our Accenture Analytics practice and our IoT practice. And we've been trying to adapt to this for the past 5 years or so, and there are 5 interesting principles that I think are very relevant that we are using in our digital practice to accommodate this enterprise transformation. The first one being that we essentially are heads down in creating industry-specific use cases and vertical-specific market strategies. So things like connected car, connected retail, etc. The second piece is what I call appification. And the idea is let's make IoT and big data very easy for adoption for enterprise clients. Specifically, if we can appify it, create intelligent apps where algorithms are abstracted with a front end, it becomes a lot easier for a client to absorb. And I'll give an example of that shortly. The third one is somewhat different from what you typically expect from a system integrator like Accenture, and that is what we call our platform consumption strategy. So the idea is we are creating sticky services, very much like software as a service. This one could be, say, something like connected car as a service. So the goal is, let's not just do system integration for these large-scale projects, let us also do platform consumption-based strategies for our clients. And finally, my favorite being what I call sort of this horizontal abstraction of data and algorithms, right? So you may have heard this as part of Spark's philosophy, which is, hey, we've got this really complex ecosystem of IoT and big data players emerging in the valley and the world as we know it. Let Accenture create the abstraction layer that sits on top of all of this. So, a few simple ideas to make this adoption so much more easier. Now, I'll say this, there is sort of this incredible birth of IoT platforms right there in the market. Intel has one, Microsoft has one, Amazon has one, Google is building one. So there's no shortage of IoT platforms suddenly. Everyone's productizing it. But the bigger question is, despite these stacks, what are sort of the killer apps for IoT? Have we built one yet? Other than, say, I don't know, Uber, and where is sort of the IoT developer network of the future tomorrow? Well, the jury might still be out on exactly what we mean by killer apps in the enterprise space for IoT or big data, but I can tell you a little bit of what we're at least doing for some of our clients. So one of the hottest ones, of course, that we see over and over again is an app we built for all our oil and gas clients, which is predictive asset maintenance, right? So it's probably the #1 use case that comes in over and over again for all our IoT clients. One that I was very fond of was this idea of connected home, where an energy client said to us, what if the end user could essentially make a decision and say, I want to save €5 a month for the next 3 months. Can you build an algorithm as an app for me that takes care of the rest of it for me? So it's this whole nestification model. So that was a really cool app that we built where it basically harvested data from outside temperatures, cities, what's happening in the home, and then the algorithm basically figures out the savings for you. So you're no longer engaging with the thermostat from a temperature perspective, but are doing it from a savings perspective. So that was, I think, pretty interesting. For our friends from Denver, one of my favorite ones was connected greenhouse or connected farming. So ambient awareness of growing produce in a greenhouse. Hey, if a window breaks down, you can have a neural network figure out whether or not to change the temperature or change the irrigation accordingly. And last but not least, something you're seeing a lot of right now is in retail. Particularly, there's always been a lot of pricing analytics work happening in retail, but increasingly people want to connect sensors to inventory systems and then drive that to figure out what exactly that means from a pricing strategy perspective. So, we at Accenture are in many ways behaving like this enterprise IoT developer network for this interestingly growing demand of enterprise IoT apps. And before people get angry and say, really, Accenture, you're going to tell a room full of startup people that you have a developer network, and before you guys start throwing things at me, I just want to point out, this is what a typical developer network community at Accenture might look like. They're young, they like to have coding parties as well, and they behave a lot like design shops and startups. And interestingly enough, despite our sort of formal methods that we use for R&D at Accenture, we are increasingly getting into this business of using hackathons to build prototypes or minimal viable products that we can embed in our sales lifecycle. So, the big philosophy that I've tried to actually sponsor at Accenture is a strategy deck or a PowerPoint is no longer enough to do IoT and big data. For this to move beyond buzzwords, we will likely have to build minimal viable products and prototypes to embed in sort of the sales lifecycle. And increasingly, a lot of the use cases in IoT and big data are so complex that you need to sort of do this think on your feet engineering as part of the sales lifecycle anyway. And that's where a nice hacker community of enterprise app developers becomes very effective in building next-gen solutions in this space. And that's a nice little segue to talk about what exactly we mean by this strange universe of new synergies that IoT and big data has created for at least our firm, and increasingly in this sort of incredible ecosystem where we have what we call ecosystem makers like Intel, which is building its own IoT platform, and Google and Microsoft. And then we've got platform creators like Zatar from Zebra or ThingWorks. And then we've got all these startups, and all are now being forced to sort of participate in this shotgun marriage of sort to essentially deliver next-gen IoT and big data solutions for our client. These synergies are inevitable primarily because we can't sell these mega IoT transformations without first collaborating internally within our own organization, whether it's between R&D, sales, product, et cetera, and then sort of mirroring that level of collaboration also within our clients. As far as inter-organizational strategies and synergies go, you'll see Accenture increasingly work with startup communities. So one of the things that I've sort of taken on is focusing very hard on embracing startups in Silicon Valley and embedding them into our own stack and into our own solutions as part of this IoT and big data solution. And last but not least, this is particularly relevant in sort of this enterprise universe, we can't do this without cultural transformations within our own organizations, right? So for IoT and big data to work in the connected space, we have to make it very easy for adoption for our clients. And for that to happen, quants and engineers and designers and business and heck, maybe even IT in the back office need to all work well together. And for this sort of progressive transformation to happen, this pie in the sky goal to happen, I'd like to think that the suits and the hoodies need to come together. And they need to work well together for this to really happen. So at the end of the day, I think we're at the beginning of a very tumultuous marriage. And I like to think that our role as system integrator has become boring and obsolete. And we as Big Four giants or consulting firms can no longer just be viewed as system integrators. We have to become what we call ecosystem engineers. And by ecosystem engineering, I mean going beyond SI work to making those platforms work together, productizing services, designing new business models, particularly usage-based business models, building enterprise apps that are very easy, simplifying those vendor relationships, prototyping new organizational models and operating models, securing client data, simulating outcomes, because hey, you can't go on a $100 million transformation at your client without actually simulating what that means, and then finally delivering client value. So if there's one thing I hope that you guys get out of this is, system integration is yesterday. We want to now be ecosystem engineers for this tumultuous marriage to really work. I want to end by talking maybe a little bit about how this marriage is going to work perhaps on a visceral level and on a philosophical level. And for that to happen, I'd like to talk about my childhood hero, Robert Joyce, who, of course, created Intel, founded Intel. And he was, I think, the prototypical suit plus hoodie engineer, salesman, designer, all sort of packaged into one. And for us to sort of emulate those ideas and those patterns together today in corporate America, for our enterprise clients and our startup communities, we cannot operate the way we used to. You know, for this polygamous or tumultuous marriage to work together, startups, designers, enterprise clients, Fortune 100 clients, we have to stop working the way we used to. We can no longer be encumbered by history. We have to go out and do something wonderful. We have to build sort of this next generation of apps out there for this to be successful. And a lot of it will involve building things that don't seem possible. You know, I was just out there yesterday talking about building a brand new offering called Connected Studio for a media giant. They want to essentially go ahead and put sensors on top of every prop and every asset, and particularly their production workflow lifecycle. Things like that don't exist today. But all we have to do is mash up offerings and ideas from different constructs and bring them together. We can use public cloud for the infrastructure. We can use our digital supply chain offerings and transform them and apply them to a media setting. We can create apps that will let security people on a connected studio lot suddenly monitor security events. One of my favorite stories in that particular pursuit was this angle that they wanted essentially to shoot down fanboy drones with bigger, badder drones, particularly these models called MP200s from France, fly them over, have an analytics algorithm that basically identifies a drone from a fanboy coming in to take a picture of the set, and the bigger drone comes down and basically throws a net on it and puts it down, right? So stuff like that doesn't exist right now, but we can create it together. But for that to happen, the startups need to embrace us in the enterprise space, and the enterprise space needs to sort of embrace startups. And specifically, the final frontier, I think, is getting our Fortune 100 clients to become increasingly comfortable with failing fast, experimenting, and being comfortable with taking risks and building services that do not exist right now. So, you know, I'll end with this quote from Robert Noyce and say, let's go ahead, work together. Let's create this ecosystem where startups, enterprises, system integrators, ecosystem engineers all work together and create the next generation of beautiful products. And that's how we will create connected enterprises and next generation industrial revolutions. So thank you very much.